All right, so we are live now. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Global Citizens. My name is Kelvin. I'm the host and I'm the owner of this channel. Now, this is first off, before I begin my interview, I actually need to thank all of my past audiences, and definitely my past guests. As without them, I cannot have my channel. However, this particular episode is one that I've been really looking forward to. Okay, so my guest for today is Miss Kerrie Phipps. So, hi Kerrie, welcome to the
Hello
channel.
there.
Hi.
Great
All
to
right.
be connecting with you.
Fantastic. All right, Kerrie. Please, maybe you would like to share a bit more about yourself to the audience.
Sure. Well, I am based in Australia, but coming to Asia a lot. So I have fallen in love with the place. I first came in December 1999. So Singapore was looking a lot different then. I actually had 3 weeks in Thailand. I took some young people over, some teenagers, some of them are still in school, and we spent 3 weeks teaching English in the university, and it was just very conversational, just crouched down in a university
Yeah.
yard and having conversations, practicing English, and then a few days in Singapore on the way home. And I just fell in love with Singapore then, and 3 years later, I did the same trip with other young people. And then I think it was 2006 when I came back next. And that was a business trip. And it was kind of unexpected. I'd been coaching since 2004. And I was so passionate about the coach training that I did. I just fully immersed myself in every program that was available. And then when their national sales manager left, I said to the global head, who was based in Sydney, please give me some names. I'm happy to follow people up. I'm happy to help you out. I don't want anyone to say that you didn't get back to them. And so suddenly I was selling coach training and it just exploded. I was making record sales. I didn't realize that. But it was because I was so passionate. I was sharing my experience as a coach and as someone who trained in coaching, someone who'd been coached by one of the coaches. And so all of a sudden I was being invited to come to Singapore and host an event here for people who wanted to know more about coaching. And that was a pivotal moment because when I stood in the room with the CEO, David Rock, he founded Results Coaching Systems, which is now the Neuro Leadership Group. And the room was, just full of chairs and we're waiting for all these people to come in. And I thought, what am I doing here? Like, how did this happen? And I turned to David and I said, are you sure there isn't somebody else who should be introducing you? I don't want to tread on any toes. And he said, Kerrie, there are no toes. Just do it. And it was this moment where this voice in my head that said something like, I'm just a country girl. It had to just fall away and I just had to step up and welcome people and share my experience of coaching, just like I had in Sydney and Melbourne and different cities around Australia. So I love that Singapore has been a place of growth for me, particularly since then. I call it my step up moment, where I just had to let go of that I'm just a country girl. And, for everybody, we have different voices in our heads that will, it might be I'm just a mum or I'm just from this region, and we don't know what's possible for us. And so I love that David just pushed me forward and I was like, okay. And I could have run away or I could have just stepped up. And so I stepped up. And there have been more step up moments since then, but that was a really pivotal one.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And so just to fast track, then 2015 is when I began to come to Asia Professional Speakers events. So I came to Speakers Convention, May 2015, and that was a key turning point. And that was when one of the speakers was sharing his story of, he'd been a corporate speaker, he'd been, in massive conferences, sold multiple books, millions of times. And now he was working full-time in India. He was like retired or semi-retired from professional speaking and building an organization of, school, orphanage and caring for the most disadvantaged young people in India. And as he was speaking, I thought, this is why I'm here. It's so I can go and help the people that I want to help. You know, I don't feel personally compelled to build schools and orphanages, but I've always been passionate about equipping leadership. And so people who want to make a bigger difference in the world, I'm right there with them, and I want to coach them and have the conversations with them to give them greater clarity so that they can have better conversations with themselves and with others. So that was another really big turning point. And so since then I've been a member of APSS, and I come to as many speaker events that I can here. And so I just tie that in with speaking engagements or coaching, working with coaching clients up here in Asia.
All right. That's wow. That's really a diverse. That's really a diverse background, actually. Okay, so before I begin, I earlier mentioned why I'm really looking forward to this episode. I am actually an aspiring speaker myself, and for me is why I actually was really looking forward to Kerrie to attend is because of her book. It's called "Do Talk to Anyone,
Do
Anywhere,"
talk
right?
to strangers. Do talk to
Yes, "Do Talk to
strangers. Yeah.
Strangers." Correct. Okay, so when I actually discovered this particular skill of mine is that I really can just talk to anybody at the age of I think around 15 or 16 or so. So
Yeah.
thank God I didn't discover it when I was younger, as if not I worry. My sister said if you discover it younger, you would be kidnapped sometime down the road. Yeah. So when it's come to this, a lot of people always mention that your network is your net worth. Yes, I believe you would have
Yeah.
heard that. Yeah.
Yeah.
What would actually be the factor that the reason why people are not willing to step out of the comfort zone to speak? I believe you mentioned earlier you step out of your comfort zone is that you're not just some country girl anymore. You really
Correct.
step up and assume your position as now at where you are now. You're a very successful woman. You're an international speaker, author, and yeah, maybe you want to share a bit on that. Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of like what happened to bring me to that, because
Yep.
I think it's all about talking to strangers. and, and when I say strangers, it actually is just about having better conversations with anyone that you're around, but being open to conversation. So, you know, as a child, you are open to conversation. And I actually think with children, they're very sensitive to somebody's energy, and you know, if they're a safe person to talk to. I think it's just
Correct.
that when we say don't talk to strangers, we don't talk to anyone. But if we're just open to look at who are the people that I need to connect with here, and sometimes it's just giving somebody a smile, but connecting with others has been the key influence in moving me forward, because you know, it wasn't just I'm just a country girl. It was, you know, I'm just limited in so many ways. You know, I would look around a room and compare myself and think everybody else is more professional than me. And this is not like a clear conversation that I was completely aware of. It's just kind of running in the background, but just a sense of, you know, I'm not professional enough, not eloquent, not educated, all of the things that I'm not as much as others, or, you know, that sense of everybody else is more professional, eloquent, educated, just even, yeah, articulate. And I think we all sometimes struggle for the right words
Correct.
to say, but we hear what somebody else says and we think, oh, that's fantastic. And we compare that to all the jumbled mess of thoughts in our head, as well as the words we actually say. And we think, oh, it's just all a big mess. And it's not. You know, everybody has got a zillion words going through their head at one time.
Correct.
And then they choose a few words and hope that it makes a difference. And I think we're all doing that. So just in having conversations with people has developed me. It's the way that I listen to people and I learn from them, and the way that I listen to myself and let go of the voice that says, you know, I'm not enough, and focus on the other person. Whether it's, you know, focusing on hearing what somebody sitting next to me on a plane is saying about their story. The more we focus in on somebody else's story, the less we worry about ourselves. And I found that is a key to connecting powerfully with people, is really choosing to be interested in them, and then we forget to be nervous about ourselves and our own story. So whether it's connecting in a networking room, which can come with all kinds of pressures, or all kinds of excitement. You know, some people just let me in there, let me in there. I can't wait to meet people, and other people, you know, have more trepidation around that. or connecting with people just in your everyday, it all gives us an opportunity, all of those moments give us an opportunity to have a better conversation with ourselves and with others.
Sorry, Kerrie. Sorry, mind my body.
Yeah,
Sorry,
go for
not
it,
the
because
body.
I'm like, yeah.
Not to worry. No. So what you're saying is that in order to actually get rid of the fear to be able to converse to anyone, yeah, you
Yeah,
have to get rid of the mindset that he or she has something that is better than you. Maybe could be richer than you, or
yeah.
maybe could be a lot taller than you. You got to get rid of it, and you got to be able to just say, "Hello, how are you?" At
Yeah,
least that's
that's right.
what you have to be willing to do. Am I right to say that?
Absolutely. And you just reminded me of a point. Like when you said taller than you, I have a friend who is 6'7" and I'm 5'4". And so
Wow.
so when you talk to someone who is so much taller than you,
Hello.
it's
You got
kind
to
of,
look up at the sky, right?
you're looking right up. Hello. Uh, and that's a perfect example of an opportunity to just comment on what's awkward, because when you comment, when you are okay with that awkward moment, when you name it, then you can laugh about it and it's okay. You could just say, I feel tiny down here. um, it just naming it makes it okay. Then you can focus on the conversation. But if you're, maybe you need to say, I just need to step back a little.
Hello.
um, yeah,
Oh,
no,
I can see you better, yeah?
yeah, and also not making the other person weird for being that tall. Maybe just having a laugh at yourself, like, wow, I'm just a little bit tiny. I should have worn my bigger shoes. But because to be mindful of others, because
Correct.
if somebody's extra tall, they might feel awkward about that. So it's just, how can we use our words to give somebody else a gift to help them feel that everything's okay and that we're great to connect with. So sometimes I've been saying this a lot recently, just be okay with the awkwardness, because on the other side of that can be a powerful connection. And so sometimes just to say, oh, excuse me, I feel a bit awkward, but I just wanted to ask you about, that tie. Like, that's a really beautiful fabric. Where did you get that? Just anything. But if it's sincere, I really don't want people just going, okay, I need to make compliments about people's tie or their suit or something, because you can sense it, can't you, when somebody is
Correct. Yeah.
being genuine.
Or
Yeah.
whether they are just being pretentious. Yeah, you can really experience that.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it can help us also, like I said, to notice the conversation with ourselves. Maybe everybody wears beautiful, fabric like that in your area. And so they might think, well, that's nothing to comment on. But you can say, I haven't seen anything like that before. So just to normalize what we're saying, so that people know you're just being sincere. I think sincerity is the most powerful connector.
I'm actually glad you mentioned that. So one of the method that I do whenever I'm attending a networking event is I will wear a batik or variation of batik. The reason being is
Ah,
that the colors stand out. And
yeah,
there's a funny story is that why I started doing that was because when I was younger, a lot younger, I was inside some MLM and there's a bunch of guys that's just wearing it and they just want to wear it for fashion statement.
yeah,
To me, this is a cultural heritage and I feel really insulted for it. So
right.
every single time that there's some kind of events or so, I would wear something that is not within their catalog. It is not something that they know, and I will tell them, "You guys are a bunch of outdated wannabes." The reason is because, yeah, because maybe that time was because I was upset. Is because you guys realize this is my cultural heritage, and you're just wearing it just for the sake of trying to stand out in a club, or maybe they just
Yeah,
want to try to use it to hook up with girls, which I find it really insulting.
yeah, yeah. And if I may say, sometimes with
Sure.
a situation like that, that might be the case. But
Yeah.
if we ask people, or if we first of all say, this is really this beautiful fabric, that means a
Correct.
lot to me. What does it mean to you?
Yeah.
Um, because we don't know somebody's story, and they
Correct.
might actually have some connection with your culture that you don't know about.
Yes,
And
exactly.
yeah, I think because we see things on social media, we just get a snippet of it, and so we judge it, and
Yep.
we make assumptions about people who wear. I've seen some videos of, from universities in the US where they're having conversations about cultural appropriation,
Correct.
and then it's just perspectives, because some people will be offended by it and other people will just go, wow, they like our stuff. They want to wear our stuff.
Yeah.
And it might not be shallow. So I think it's just always great. Excuse me. It's always
Correct.
great to ask people, like, what does that mean to you? And because I've been working with clients recently on, you might have seen in the book, Do Talk to Strangers, there's the asking model. And so it's ASK, and K is keep going with quality questions, because people often don't keep going or they don't start the conversation because they're scared of, like, how do I keep going? How do I make this a meaningful conversation past the smile, the start small.
Yeah.
Start small with a smile is the S. And in quality questions, sometimes you might want to say, why are you wearing that?
Yep.
But why is rarely a useful question because a why makes you defend yourself. You have to come up with a story, like, why did I make that decision? But if you say, what does that mean to you? A question, a what or a how, or, like, how did you come across this? What does it mean to you? What do you like about it? Then those questions, they're not threatening at all. They come from a place of curiosity. And if we can be curious in our connections with people, then they feel, connected and engaged, and because you're taking an interest in them, which is the I. So I wasn't going to go through the asking model, but we've just covered 3 of them.
Not to worry. Okay, Kerrie.
High level.
So with regards to earlier you mentioned on cultural appropriation, yeah? So one of my most delightful experience when dealing with an Australian is the genuinity. Is that, let's say, when I enter a retail store, and that even though maybe I have no intention on buying anything, and maybe I ask maybe this particular fabric, or maybe what does this product is about, the shopkeeper would be so genuine to talk to you, is that they really want to get to know you. They really want you to accept them as a companion, as a friend of sort, yeah? So it makes you feel a lot more comfortable. So when you first entered Singapore, yeah, what kind of challenges that you handled in terms of cultural differences? Or maybe at that time it was okay, maybe I'll just go at it the same way I used to go about it. Or maybe there was some kind of differences that you handled because of the cultural differences?
Okay, I've kind of got 2 responses to that.
Sure.
One was kind of how easy it has been, but also I'm remembering that years ago on a Sydney train, I looked. It was a Friday night, and I looked around the carriage, and there were 3 of us, sort of spaced out a little, and all of us had a phone in our hand, and I looked across at them, and I just said, "It's Friday night. Are we still working?" And
oh, you don't want to hear that.
so there's a guy here, a guy over there, and they both kind of laughed. But one of them just went straight back to it. And the other one was straight into conversation. And he's like, yeah, we shouldn't be working now. Anyway, we talked for about 40 minutes until I got off at my grandparents' place. And he taught me that, when you're doing business in Asia, to hand the business card with 2 hands. And he just spoke about the respect. And I went, wow, that really makes sense. Because, I have a beautiful business card. I'm not sure if I have one right here. But when I give it to somebody and they just toss it in their pocket, so this might be an Australian way of receiving a card, just straight in the pocket.
Oh.
And I know that, especially when I've got a new one, and Nathan's done a beautiful job of creating this card, and it feels good. So there's a big difference between, like, yeah, thanks, and shoving it in the pocket, or taking it and going, wow, that's really beautiful. Oh, so you do this, and just appreciating it. And I've seen that people do that here. They appreciate the work that's gone into it. They're looking at your story and going, wow, where was that photo taken? Because on the back of my card, I have, like, a huge audience photo, and I'm kind of in the corner on stage, but the audience is massive. It was in India. And so there's a story, and people ask about that. And so there's more respect in connecting. And I think sometimes in Australian connections, it can just be very, very casual, very laid back, and, like, oh yeah, thanks, and just shove it in the pocket because maybe you'll look at it later. But that was something that I came to Singapore knowing, to be respectful with the business cards and to appreciate someone's story, to take an interest in it. And, sometimes it can really help with with connecting, like with knowing what questions to ask people, because they've just given you a clue, and you can say, yeah, I'd love to know more about that. Tell me about that. And so, yeah, and again, it's being okay with awkwardness and being in the moment. And maybe sometimes when you don't know what to ask, to say to somebody, you know, what's the best question I can ask you right now? That's a quality question. And it's being okay with not knowing. But if I said to you, what's the best question I can ask you right now? You might go, well, I've got some really exciting news I'm bursting to tell you. Sometimes we wait for somebody to just say the right thing to like share our news. So, you know, and you ask an entrepreneur, what do? They love that question. But if you ask, you know, somebody who's sitting next to you on a plane, they might really not want to discuss what they do. Right. You know, they might be a doctor and they're afraid that you're going to say, oh, I've got this rash on my hand, you know, or someone who works in, you know, in the legal profession, they don't want to talk about what they're doing because you might say, oh, you know, my brother had to go to court last week. I got
this lawsuit and stuff.
Yeah. So I am learning all the time from people that I travel with. And just recently I've flown up here with my husband. And he said, if you want to sit somewhere different on the plane, that's okay. I'm like, oh, because he would love to just sit with me and just enjoy the whole trip. And I did. But I love that he's giving me that space, because he knows that when I get home from a trip, I'm like, so on this flight, I met this person and they've been in like, you know, international banking for years, and they just gave me some really incredible insights. And he's like, I don't want to hold you back from that.
Shout out to your husband, please. That is really amazing for him to actually know your personal quirks.
Yeah, because when you're traveling with somebody, you just don't seem to connect. You don't talk to strangers anywhere nearly as much. Although sometimes you can have a group conversation. But yeah, any opportunity to connect is really important to take that opportunity. But also, as I said, you know, I'm about better conversations with yourself and others. Sometimes you need the conversation, we've just lost our lights, but the conversation with yourself. And so it's important, if you want to be a great connector with others, you need to connect well with yourself also. So, and I guess that's come from years of coaching. I've been coaching for like 15 years now. And it's really only in the last 5 years I've been speaking more.
15 years, yeah. So you first visited, sorry, if I recall correctly, you mentioned you visited Singapore in 1999, was that correct?
Yes, yeah. That was pre-coaching. I was working with youth and families and doing community work. So, yeah. But there was mentoring involved in that. But from the time that I did coach training and accreditation, that was 2004.
Okay. Just to further elaborate, earlier you mentioned is that to be a better connector, you need to be able to talk to yourself also, right? Can I elaborate it with the sentence is, know yourself, then be yourself. Is that something that you feel that can agree? Because that is actually a philosophy that I've actually been practicing in the recent years.
Yeah, that's really well said, because I think people can say, be yourself, you know, just go be you. And people actually don't take the time to explore what is...
Who am I actually?
Yeah. And what is it that makes me unique? And I think sometimes we're scared to look inside. You know, my first book was actually a journal. That's the one book that I have with me. Create the Life Journal. My husband and son, who's now now 19 and in the Air Force. There he was, he was 4 when I started coaching. And it's important to journal, and actually I think I wrote in it right at the beginning, to journal is to be courageous, because you come face to face with yourself. And sometimes we don't want to do that. And I was actually running a session here in Singapore a couple of weeks ago, and one person in the room was talking about how, you know, they love journaling and they, you know, get so much clarity. And somebody else said, I don't want to have time to think. She said, I just, you know, as soon as I've got a minute to myself, I'm like, okay, I'll just watch a video. I'll just, you know, get on social media. And she was stressed, because it can be stressful to look at yourself. But it's actually really powerful to get to know, you know, what pushes my buttons, what adds stress, and how can I create more space to do the things that I need to do to replenish myself. How am I connecting with others? If I'm being impatient, what is that about? What are the expectations that I'm putting on others? And what are the expectations I'm putting on myself? So it's really important that we ask ourselves these questions, and we need to know ourselves really to be authentic, to be ourselves. So I love that you've articulated it like that.
Yeah, the reason why I tend to do that is because, okay, first off, maybe I did a little shout out for your son, yeah? He's in the Air Force. I
Yeah.
actually served Singapore Armed Forces for 2 years when I was doing my compulsory military service. I'm actually a
Yeah,
Singaporean
great.
PR.
Great.
So this is actually one of the essence that I discovered that particular phrase is when I was serving, is because unlike in a typical school setting, yeah, whereby you come into school, you are with people that you are familiar with, maybe from your
Yeah.
first year in school until
Yeah.
the day you graduated. When you're in the military, you tend to be mixed around with people of different backgrounds, and at that time it was really an ultimate culture shock for me. Really, it's because you get to see that some people might not come from a much more privileged background than you, or some people might
Yeah.
come from a much more privileged background than you. But the thing
Yeah.
is that, well, they tend to not be happy about it. It's because maybe a lot of time is they don't see their family members, or maybe
Yeah.
they tend to just be, okay, I'm giving you maybe a certain amount of money for this particular month. You just do whatever you want to do. You just don't bother me with it.
Yeah.
So that is something that allows me to come up with this particular mindset, is because I realized that there was some stuff that I actually like. Even
Yeah.
though in the past I would have said that, no, I don't want to do this. And you get to see the reality, the two sides of the coin, then you
Yeah.
get to understand who you really are. I think that's one of the
Yes.
source.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's another example of shifting to a different culture. So,
Sure.
sometimes we think of culture as in different countries, but there
Right.
are different cultures like in workplaces, in families. I mean, when I got married 25 years ago, I realized that families have cultures, even
Correct.
though, my husband's from a regular Aussie family, 1 hour down the road from my parents on a farm. My husband's dad had lots of chickens in the backyard, but their family culture, their way of seeing the world was very different. And so I think the more we travel, the
Yeah.
more we connect with people in different cultures, different kinds of workplaces, even different
Correct.
departments. If you're working in, let's use a client example at the moment. Like I was in the HP head office in Perth,
Yeah.
and the session that I did, we actually had people from HR, from petroleum, from the mining and finance and IT. And so people in IT, they think differently to people who are in finance. They
Correct.
think
Yeah.
differently to people who are running big mining operations. And, out there in northwestern Australia, where it's just red dirt for miles. And so to be able to connect with people from a different culture of any kind, it enlarges our thinking. I think it increases our empathy, and I think this is a really, really important part of talking to strangers and traveling and exploring and having conversations and being open and asking questions like we talked about
Correct.
before. What does this mean to you, and what's your perspective on this? And being open to letting people have their opinion, not needing to fix or to judge or to convince anybody, but just to be open to learn from others is incredibly powerful, because we need more empathy in the world. I think
Correct.
most
Yeah.
people would agree with that. And when we are open to so many different perspectives, we can realize that, that's great. They think like that, and maybe that confronts us. And if we can appreciate that, I like it when somebody says something that's completely different. Now I do. I didn't always. But I remember when I was a new coach, and I said to a very experienced coach, I said, I just love the coaching industry. And I was telling her why, but I said, you can really be yourself here. And
Yeah.
she said, oh, I completely disagree.
Oh.
Yeah. And then she said, I think you can be yourself in any industry.
Hmm.
And I went, wow. So from my experience was that I had not been in an industry or in a workplace where I felt I could be myself. So the coaching world was so liberating for me. But when she said, I completely disagree, and then said why, I saw that I wasn't offended, so that amazed me. And I didn't feel threatened when she said, I completely disagree. I was curious, and perhaps it was her way of saying it. She didn't say it with judgment. She said it with, openness and curiosity. And I just went, wow, I love that someone can have a different opinion. And it doesn't make me wrong. It just means that she has a different perspective. And I welcomed her perspective, and it opened my mind up more, because I'm not going to then make judgments about people in other industries that they can't be themselves, because that would be so limited. But we realise, I think, that we have limited thinking when we connect with people who are different to us. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important to connect with other cultures. So empathy, thinking differently, growing. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think it will be most beneficial, let's say in an office setting, whereby there's a department full of psychologists, whereby all of the different departments can actually come together, then they talk about, then this group of psychologists actually can tell you, okay, the reason why you're having this misunderstanding or this issue is because, this is how they think, this is how they do it. Do you think it will be most beneficial?
Yeah, actually, instead of saying what I see, first of all, I want to ask questions. I might ask a question like, what assumptions are we making here?
Correct.
And because that gets everyone to turn inward and go, what assumptions could I be making?
Correct.
And I probably wouldn't say, what assumptions are you making? But what assumptions could we be making here? And what expectations do we have of each other? And what expectations do you have of yourself? Because we just don't take the time to get clear on that. And which takes me back to journaling. It's good to write those things down, but to challenge our own assumptions and expectations, then it's like, again, be okay with awkward. Just put that out on the table and go, yeah, I'm kind of assuming that you just see the world like I do. And I think another really pivotal moment was learning, about neuroscience. I think the first thing that I learned was that no two brains are remotely alike.
Correct.
So, there's photos of MRI scans. So here's a brain. They're both focusing on the same task, but different parts of their brain are lit up. And, the way they think, even if they come to the same conclusion, it still is different.
Different mind procedure, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, parents of twins tell you this, no two brains are remotely alike. And so we can't come in as an expert and say, this is what this person will do, or we can't predict human behaviour. We can have a fair idea of how certain people might make decisions, but it's far safer in terms of the relationship and just getting things done to say, what do you think? To be asking the questions to help people identify things themselves. Because if I try and tell you how it should be, and you might think, yeah, I agree with that, but there's some hesitation because it's not an insight born in your own brain. So if I can help people have insights, to do their own thinking rather than just telling them what I think, that can be really connecting and liberating and quite powerful.
Okay, that's good. All right. So for the new viewers that just tune in to Global Citizens here, so Global Citizens is a show that I created. It's actually now in its 8th episode with our lovely Kerrie here. So in each episode, I would host expatriates, international speakers, digital nomads, and TCKs, which is myself, actually, to a certain extent. The reason being why I actually created this channel was because in my last year in Singapore, I was working for a British employer, and there was a miscommunication, and one of the issue was the misunderstanding of the working culture in Singapore.
Yeah.
So as a result, at that particular time, we lost potentially around $40,000 potential deal. Is because at that time was that what happened was some potential clients actually started to contact me back, I think in the month of February, which is after Chinese New Year. So as a result, at that time, there were 2 people who were interested in it, and they wanted to actually give more referrals. So yeah, that's what I mean. We potentially lost $40,000. So
Right.
as a result of that, in each of these episodes, I would love each of the people that I invited. Actually, I would ask on their different perspective and how is it working for them? Because
Yeah.
one country, what you did in your home country is not the same as in another
Yes.
country. In fact, I
Exactly.
believe Mercedes, was it Mercedes or the BMW? When they first actually launched their car to Asia, the car was a total bust. It's because
Wow.
the car cannot sustain the climate in Asia, which is so much hotter. So as a
Okay.
result, the car was totaled. So
Wow.
with that in mind, I actually created this channel. Is
Ah,
because
great.
yeah, because all of these individuals that I had invited, such as yourself, is we are able to see both sides of the coin. What we are experiencing, how we think could have improved over the years, because when we are exposed to a certain culture,
Yeah.
so what could be improved for ourselves? Okay,
Yeah.
that's actually one question on that, Anya. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
through your
appreciate you
time
sharing that. Yeah.
through your time spending time in Singapore, yeah. How has your mindset and your perspective changed, though? From your time spending time training and coaching people in Singapore, as compared to how your personal traits and personality that you could have brought over from how you originally were.
Yeah. I think I probably ask more questions now, and I see the value even more in asking more
Correct.
questions, because even as you're sharing that, I think if we come in with training to how do I connect in Singapore, if I was to teach that, and then people would come in and try and connect in Singapore the same way that I recommended, but they might be meeting someone who
Correct.
looks Singaporean, but they've grown up in London, or they're from the Philippines, and I spent a lot of time in the Philippines also,
Oh,
and like just in the past few years I've been there 7 times and love the audiences there also, and Malaysia and Indonesia and India, and
wow.
it's too easy to make assumptions about particular cultures,
Correct. That is correct.
and anyone that you meet in any of these countries has their own journey, their own experiences. So I think really asking questions, and that can help us gain clarity. Not just asking questions of the person that we want to work with
Correct.
themselves. If I want to go and work in a particular environment with a particular culture, I can be asking them more questions. How can I serve you best? And
Yeah.
that's valuable. And perhaps talking to peers, to mentors, and asking them, their experience. But we then need to be careful that we're not just taking on someone else's
Correct.
assumptions and judgments. Yeah. So I guess it's really raising awareness of the conversation, again, that we have in our head and with
Yeah,
others.
no worries.
So just tell me if I missed your question, because I know I was
No
thinking
worries.
about
No
the
worries.
previous comment that you made. How has it changed me? Yeah, so I ask more questions, and yeah, I think it's increased my empathy, because
Oh,
I have heard so many people's stories, and realizing that everyone has different struggles and that we don't see them and understand. One of my, I think it was my first Uber share
oh,
in Singapore several years ago, and it was 1 a.m. And my mum was with me at a big late night out at Marina Bay Sands. And so we jumped in a car, and then we picked up 2 young men from an office. And
okay.
they were leaving the office after 1 a.m. on a Saturday morning. And,
Wow.
I asked them, were they really working all that time? And they said, oh, they stopped for dinner. They bought dinner in. And one of the comments they made was that Singapore is the unhappiest country in the world.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, really?
Wow.
Like, I think maybe they need to travel and go to
Yeah.
some, places that are really struggling, and come back to Singapore with fresh eyes, because it's just a human
Yeah.
nature. It's just to think, if you're in
We
a
are doing
hard
our own
place,
struggle.
to
Yeah.
think, oh, this is the hardest thing. Like, other people, we just look on the TV and think, everyone else has got this glamorous life. Or maybe you look at other people's Instagram and you just think, oh, it's so easy for them. And I remember one day I was in the Philippines, and it was a brutal schedule. I,
Oh.
I flew to Sydney, because I live out in the country. So it's a 1 hour flight to Sydney. Then I did a 1-day conference, and I was pretty much on my feet all day, and then flew to Singapore. And then I had 6 hours in Singapore. So I came out to see some of the Asia Professional Speakers members,
Yep.
and went back to the airport, checked in, got like an hour's sleep, and then to Cebu. Went from Cebu to, so I spoke there. So I had like a day, not even a night in Cebu. I had the full day. I spoke to about 200 leaders there. Then we flew up to Manila. The flight was delayed. Got there, 2 hours sleep. Then I'm on stage in front of another 200 leaders. Then we go to another function where there's like 1,000 people in the audience. Did
Wow.
that presentation, and it was amazing. I mean, the Filipino audience, they're just so beautiful, and they're like running at me when I come off the stage, running at me with gifts, and it was extraordinary. And then the next day, so I saw 3 a.m. 3 nights in a row. So I was like so fatigued. Then we go for a long drive, have lunch with some leaders. Then we end up at this beach resort, and the sun's going down. I got some beautiful pictures. Then we, go and have more conversation, late dinner. And I said to my husband, I can't post photos from here. Like, this place is stunning. But I could just feel that contrast. If I post these photos, then it looks like, oh, Kerrie's got this life. It's just beautiful. She's just, relaxing in some resort in the Philippines.
Correct.
But because of, the thousands of people I just connected with, I didn't want to be saying, brutal schedule, I'm exhausted. Because I don't want them to feel like I was, disappointed or complaining or anything. But then I can't share, the beautiful pictures either, because I don't want people to be judging themselves based on what they see of my life. It really is quite complicated sometimes. And it makes me more aware that behind everyone's Instagram picture can be, chaos and frustration and fear and a whole lot going on. And they might not be intentionally trying to show a glossy picture, but it's just that we can't communicate everything at once, and it's not good to communicate everything to everybody. But we just need to be careful of the assumptions that we make, and we can't feel that we're in the toughest spot. There's always someone who's going through something more challenging, more frightening. And so I think, like those young Singaporean men in the car, I wish they could travel. Take a little time off work. Don't work till 1 a.m. Take some time out to go and hear somebody else's story and to learn from them and expand your understanding of the world and other people and yourself. And let that empathy increase also.
Oh, okay. Regarding that, I'm glad you brought it up. It's because not only for traveling, I guess the thing is that when they travel, if they are doing it on a holiday mindset, that they are just there to enjoy the scenery. I mean, the locals don't go to a tourist vacation spot every day, right?
Yeah.
Their main priority should actually try to, I think maybe they should do something like an exchange program also to better immerse themselves in the culture. We actually have a mutual contact. His name is Mr. Alberto Antinucci. I believe you know him.
Yes.
Yeah, he was actually one of my previous guests before. Alberto mentioned about somewhat he would consider one of his personal failure, or in his sense, or I would call it as a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
Since one of my guests gave me that feedback, is don't call a failure, it's a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
For him is that when he mentioned in his earliest day in China, is that there was once that there was a misunderstanding with the partners, and as a result, he was he in his words he was being an Italian, and he was confronting the person in front of everybody. As a result, it resulted in a dropping of the business.
Right.
So
Yeah.
this is not the type of things that we would have known unless we are really immersing ourselves in the culture. It's because certain ways and certain procedures might be different for some people. Like, for example, that's the reason why in every one of my description for all my guests, I actually like to put some random facts about some other country. The reason being is that, well, this is something you need to know. You cannot just come to other people's country and then expect them to do stuff your way. This is why it's done this way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Always
Sorry.
so much to learn. And I think, again, you're reminding me I need to ask more questions. Because I know sometimes I've seen, I've just bought an Australian mindset to this conversation and just,
Correct.
oh, no rush, she'll be right. Whereas people might have expected me to be more decisive and, let's do this. And I'm like, wow, because I was just overhearing a conversation in a cafe the other day. And I said to my husband, everyone's very mindful of time. Your time is precious. Let's, just get straight to business. And I was like, wow, yeah, I'm happy to, I guess I want to be guided by the person that I'm connecting with, because sometimes people want more time to just get to know you. We can talk about business later. And other people are just like, right, how can you serve our team? So, okay, all right, we're having that conversation now. So, again, being open to be learning from the people that we're connecting with is so important. And Alberto, we connected through Asia Professional Speakers.
Oh,
and then
okay.
and then I ended up in Germany several weeks later with Frank, who is he came to the conference too, and we did a little Facebook Live. Alberto joined in, and he was messaging saying hi, and I said, "Oh, do you want to jump on live?" And then just recently, Frank and Alberto connected in Italy, and so they were messaging me and going, "Hey, we're hanging out and talking about how you were in Germany with Frank." It's just really lovely to start building that global community and learning from each other. And, so the time I spent in Germany with Frank was really quite valuable. And I know that Alberto and Frank have just found that experience also.
Okay. In note of that, okay. Have you, do you ever recall like a personal, people like, as I mentioned, I don't like to use the word failure, a personal unique learning opportunity because of cultural differences. Have you ever encountered that? Or
so many.
Oh, wow.
I think in a particular country, which might remain nameless, I realized I needed to be more direct, more assertive, because and we're talking just before you started recording about my willingness to sit in uncertainty and be really adaptive and. Because I know I'm learning, so I'm not going to come in and just go, this is how it has to be. But in some cultures, you might need to be more like that. And so I really just got steamrolled because I didn't say, this is not good enough, because I wanted to be flexible and of service. And I've realized now I need to be much clearer in that particular culture and have my boundaries, and just even little things like I will have 9 hours off at night where I don't see anyone. I need to get my sleep. I need to have some time to prepare, rather than just letting people dictate my schedule, because I need to show up and be my best. So I need to get sleep. I need to have rest, and I need to be able to contact my family back home. And so I came home from a particular trip completely exhausted, and it's not even the one I mentioned earlier. So maybe I had to learn that lesson a few times, because being of service is that's my foremost way of connecting with people, I guess. And I will give away way too much time and energy and not ask for enough of that for myself. So that was pretty powerful learning. And I hope that I still want to be of service. I still want to, carry that attitude, but I also need to look after myself. That's where I've really wrecked myself physically, mentally, and emotionally by letting myself be, overmanaged by other people.
Okay. With regards to this is something quite a little interesting on that. Yeah. So the thing is, when the benefit of being exposed to the different culture is that you get to see some of the other side. How is it? Why maybe some issue, maybe maybe the Caucasian could be considered better, or maybe some issue could be considered an Asian could do better. Yeah, it's because we are the exposure to the different mindset. So for the upcoming generation of, especially the millennial generation, what would you advise for them to actually to improve themselves, to be a better version of themselves?
I think it all comes down to communication, and I guess asking questions, getting mentors. And it's really surprised me sometimes when young people have reached out and asked for coaching, because like my youngest client was 15 actually, and had to deal with a life-changing diagnosis, and her mum connected us. So that was quite profound. But those who've just come and connected with me themselves and funded it themselves have been 18 and 21-year-olds. And that kind of surprised me, because often we come out of school and think, you know, that's it, I don't want more adults telling me what to do. And the kind of coaching that I do, I am not telling anyone what to do, because I understand that no two brains are alike, and I want them to have the clarity. I want to be asking the questions to help them hear themselves think, and then have a better conversation with themselves and get the better outcomes. So I think being unafraid to ask questions and to put yourself in the hands of a mentor or a coach, which again are quite different, but to be clear on the kind of help that you can get and not be afraid to ask for help. And I think it's the same for older people too, to connect with young people and say, how can I see the world differently through your lens? But yeah, reaching out, asking questions, and being mindful of communication, and that you might communicate differently. You know, I've got a friend who is a very, you know, highly paid, fully booked professional speaker, and isn't on LinkedIn, isn't, you know, isn't doing all the social media stuff, but he stays connected with people so incredibly well. He sends notes in the mail, and my son, you know, I said he's 19. He loves getting mail, because he's there on the Air Force Base, and so when we send him mail, it just means so much to him. And we've got a few other family members and friends that send him mail. But this week, he's been wanting to send mail to his friends. And so he puts it out there on his social media, just to a small group. You know, send me your address if you want me to send mail. And they're not responding. And I was like, wow, don't take it personally, champ. Some people probably never have received mail. They don't know the joy of actually getting physical letters that are handwritten to them.
Yeah, I've never even used mail, actually.
Yeah,
I
it's
know
one of those.
email, but I don't know mail.
Wow, well, send me your address and let me send you something in the post, and then you'll be like, oh, okay, that's what this feels like. It's a new experience. So, you know, I think connecting across the generations is like connecting across cultures. And so I would encourage millennials, but I would also encourage people of any age that might be watching, to connect with people who are a different age to you, and ask them about how they see the world. How do they communicate? You know, I think something that happened was really recently that was a bit sad. My son said he got this letter from me, and I posted him a book, and he said, oh, I couldn't really read the letter though, because I can't read your writing. And I said to my husband, how can he not read my writing, but he can read yours? But my husband was the one who wrote all the notes for the school. And I thought, because we're online so much, he probably hasn't seen my writing as much as I grew up seeing my mum's writing.
Okay.
And so many people say they can read my writing, and, you know, they like my writing, but he hasn't really experienced it. And I'm like, no. Wow, we connect on, you know, Facebook, etc. We message all the time. So we need to practice some of these ways of connecting, and also just be honest about how it's working for us. So it's a bit painful that he told me that, but I will write more carefully next time, because I know he loves the mail. So yeah, connect with other cultures, connect with other ages, ask questions, and be willing to explore, to know yourself, as you said. Know yourself and be yourself.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, this is actually my last official question. The reason being is that I will always ask this to all of my guests.
Okay.
What 3 advices would you give to an aspiring speaker or a coach who are just about to start?
Okay, 3. Well, I'd say get a coach.
Yeah.
Because, you know, a lot of coaches struggle to sell coaching, to value their services, and they might not have been through the process themselves. So I think it's an integrity issue, and I also think it helps you believe in coaching when you've had your own transformation through investing yourself personally in working with a coach. And it helps you grow your business so much faster, because you've got that clarity of, you know, and you can explore who am I and how do I best serve the world. So I'd say the same for speakers too, to work with a coach, but also and across both, get as much training as you can. And I mean, for me, I said I can live with a high level of uncertainty. So I can go and invest in training and not even know how I'm going to pay for it, but go, I just need to do this because I need to grow. And so
Correct.
I think sometimes we can, as a coach or speaker, think, I need to help other people, but we need to let other people help us too, so that we can really be the best that we can be. And so the third thing is, if it's the third thing, talk to strangers. Do talk to strangers and ask questions. So
Yeah, that's true.
when people say, "Oh, I talk to strangers," I want to ask very gently, or maybe directly, and do you listen? Do you listen to strangers? Don't just go talking to them and like chat, but ask them questions. Ask them about their perspective on different things,
Correct.
and that will grow your world in more ways than one. It grows your network and it just opens doors to possibilities. Most of my bookings come from a conversation. Sometimes a conversation on a plane, in the airport, standing in line, queuing up for coffee. Extraordinary things can happen just in those little moments. So be open to talking to strangers, be respectful, be generous, help out with somebody's luggage when it falls over. All of those little things, can be the beginning of a powerful friendship or referral or learning, insights. The things that we can learn from other people are extraordinary. So I think as you grow and become an expert, always be a learner.
All right. Okay, that is actually my last question. Kerrie, do you have anything you want to mention, especially regarding your book? I believe you mentioned you are going to have a sequel to your current book, yeah?
I launched the sequel last year, so that's the Do Talk to Strangers.
Congratulations, belated congratulations.
Thank you. And so there's 2 Do Talk to Strangers books at the moment. That's my 3rd and my 4th book. Yeah, that's my first one. And we actually, it's 11 years old now, and then we've just had the 10th anniversary of my 2nd book, which is
Congratulations.
called... Thank you.
Congratulations. Happy birthday to your book.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, you know what? If anyone would like a copy of that book, they can just send me a message, however you're connecting us. And that's called Lifting the Lid on Quiet Achievers, which is success stories of regional entrepreneurs. So I interviewed entrepreneurs from regional parts of Australia, other people who might have the, I'm just a country person conversation in their head. But I think it's relevant to everybody who's building a business because I interviewed them about their thinking, their problem solving. So while that book is 10 years old, there's still so much wisdom in it because I love seeing the solution focus and people's stories and how they overcame challenges. And so I will send anyone the ebook if they'd like to contact me. And so there's Do Talk to Strangers, 2 copies, 2 different versions of that. And there's more of those coming, but I'm not sure in which order they'll come. So I won't say any more about those at the moment.
All right, then. Okay, that will be the end of Global Citizens episode 8. So I need to give a little shout out to, this is my old friend actually. His name is Melvin. He commented on the video. Hi Melvin, how are you? And along with that, I actually need to do a little shout out for StreamYard since this is the software that I'm using in order to host my Facebook live show. If any one of you would be interested to try on creating like a podcast or maybe your own Facebook live show like what I'm doing, there's a referral link code at the description box. Along with that, there's Kerrie's website and all of her social medias, including her YouTube channel, is already put in the description box. So please do check it out. If there's a question that you would like to ask her, or you can also reach out to me, as all of the informations are there. And with that, that's the end of the show. And thank you so much.
Ask one question.
Sure, Kerrie.
Just if people are watching that this week, my website is under reconstruction because I've got 12 years of blogs on it, and anyway, it was crashing, and so the new one is in progress. But the best way to reach out to me is through LinkedIn. But please tell me how we connected, because if you want to be a good connector, then don't just click add friend on Facebook or LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But send a message and say, hey, this is the connection. Like I wanted to connect because of Calvin. And that will shoot you right to the top of the pile of everyone who requests. So keep your connecting
when I actually connected with Kerrie, I just said, hi, I have a Facebook live show. Would you like to join? And
You gave me a reason why you wanted to connect. And so then I have to respond to that. But if it's just another friend request, I haven't got time to get into all of them at the moment. So thank you.
All right.
Keep the connection real.
All right. So enjoy the rest of your day, Kerrie. And with that, it's the end of the show. Bye bye.
Thank you, Calvin. Bye.
You're most welcome.